Hello everyone. This is Namrita. I am an assistant professor, computer science and engineering. I'm from Bangalore, India. I'm passionate about teaching computer science and machine learning. So I am really excited to be a part of Pi Data Global 2021 conference, and I'm looking forward to some interesting session here. Wherever you find an interesting point, feel free to point it out to me in chat window. And the link to this notebook has been shared with you in the Zoom chat. You can do it along with me, and you can also download and keep it for your reference. This is a workshop, right? 1.5 hours duration. So we will cover NumPy. I'll try to discuss many important functions in NumPy. Same for pandas. We'll see a very brief introduction to Matplotlib also, because any kind of data science and data analysis related project, remains almost incomplete without visualization, exploratory data analysis, heavily depends on visualization and plotting, so on. We'll see two case studies. I have used a number of sources and references to compile to put together this tutorial. I gratefully acknowledge all these authors and their resources, and I have shared the list with you all also for in-depth exploration and further study of the topics that we are going to cover today. So my primary references for this have been the documentation at numpy.org and pandas.pydata.org. I have also referred to Wes McKinney's book. I also referred to the Oliver Triumphant's book on NumPy, the Guide to NumPy book. There have been a lot of other resources also, so please feel free to go ahead and explore them further. I will cover a case study which I came across during my workshop at NVIDIA. NVIDIA's DLI Institute provides a lot of courses, workshops to interested students and faculty members. This workshop was on Rapids, which is NVIDIA's open source project for rapid and fast data science related operations, which is very similar to what Pandas and NumPy provides. So I have based this case study somewhat inspired from that case study. And with that, I think we are, ready to start today's session. I'll be covering NumPy first. It'll be followed by a very small introduction to Matplotlib's plotting functionality, and then we'll go to Pandas, followed by the case studies. I'm expecting some working experience with Python programming from the participants, because I will not cover introduction to Python programming and all that. So I hope most of the participants, or at least a good number of participants here, are aware or are experienced with programming using Python. So NumPy is a Python library for numerical computing. We are aware that a lot of machine learning and data science operations rely heavily on numerical data processing and numerical computing. So NumPy provides us a new data structure, which is in addition to the basic Python objects like list, tuple, data, dictionary, and sets and all that. So this n-dimensional array is specially optimized for faster access, because the data is stored in contiguous memory locations in RAM. Then there are a lot of routines and functions which have been coded in C. The compiled C code works much faster than the interpreted Python code. NumPy has a lot of sub-packages for, which give you ready-made functions for arithmetic operations, logical operations. Then for linear algebra, operations involving random numbers, we have a lot of functionality for reshaping our data. We can do Fourier transforms and other kind of operations very easily by using the built-in functions in NumPy. I hope audio and video, everything is fine, right? There's no glitch anywhere. If there's a problem, please feel free to let me know to adjust my audio or anything else. Right. So I spoke about this multi-dimensional array, or ND array as it is called. This is an encapsulated wrapper over a multi-dimensional array object, which has a lot of built-in functions which can be used by the programmers to work with their data. One factor which helps NumPy work very fast is the contiguous memory allocation inside RAM. The other one is vectorization and broadcasting. Using vectorization and broadcasting, a programmer, has no need to write explicit loops and indexes while performing operations on large amounts of data in a multidimensional array. There is also a lot of support in NumPy for multiple kinds of hardware platforms. It supports GPUs, sparse libraries as well. So you can also integrate your NumPy code with the code you have in other languages like C, C++, and Fortran. This is just an example from Python for Data Analysis book by Wes McKinney. This example, we are creating an array. We are going to look at the methods for creating an ND array. There are a lot of methods. For this example, I will not talk about the methods for creation. I'm just trying to show you the speed gain we get by storing same amount of data in an ND array as compared to in a basic Python list. So what we need to do when we want to work with a NumPy array, we first need to import NumPy. And of course, before importing, you need to install NumPy. For Conda or Anaconda, we need to install using Conda install. And for Python simple installation, you can use Paperwhip 3. So once we have imported NumPy into our packages, into our workspace, and by the way, I have not spoken about Jupyter Notebook. I was assuming that everybody will be comfortable opening and working with the Jupyter Notebook. So I'm not focused on that part of this task. Once we have imported NumPy, we can create an array using multiple functions. Arange is one of the functions which help us to generate a range of integers. You can specify the starting point, the ending point, and the step size. However, the ending point is the only mandatory parameter here. So in this statement, I am intending to generate a list of 100 million integers starting at 0, going all the way up to 9 and 7 nines. Right, so this is 10 million integers which have been generated for me by arange function in NumPy, and the data type of this data structure is ND array. I have generated the same list of numbers using the native Python function called range. It's also generating the same 10 million numbers for me. But in this case, the data type or the data structure used to store these numbers is list. So what we are doing here is in a for loop, we are multiplying every number in the array by 2. And this operation is being repeated 10 times. So there are around 1 billion multiplication operations being done in an array. I've used a magic command %time to find out the time required, the CPU time that's required by this computation. The computer that I am using is a simple 8 GB laptop using Intel Core i7. So my times may be different from what you see on your machines, depending on the platform, the hardware that you are using. Same operation has been done in a list also. We can see there's around 60 times a reduction in the time utilized for the same operation when your data is in an array as compared to when it is in a list. So this example is from the book by Wes McKinney, not mine at all. This is just to show you the power of having your data in an ND array. And we are aware that when we are working with machine learning and data analysis, the amount of data that is often handled is huge. The data sets are huge in size. So NumPy obviously gives us that advantage of speed when we have to work with such huge volumes of data. So with that, I hope I have created an interest in all of us for learning NumPy and for exploring pandas further. So we'll see at the methods for creating your ND arrays. The very basic method that is there is array. We access it using the module name np.array, and you can pass the data right in front in the function braces of the array function. You can see the values generated for you, but just by typing name of the array object or by using a print statement. So here ARR1 is the name of my variable. I have used array function to typecast these values into an ND array. Here is your output cell, which shows you that your output is an array. It contains 5 values. NumPy provides, Python provides type function for you to see the data type of any variable or an object. So array is a basic method for generating an ND array or for typecasting a data set into an array. Besides this, there are so many more methods. There's a method called zeros, which generates an array of specified dimensions populated with all zeros. Of course, you can later reassign at particular locations using the reassignment functions. Then we have ones function, which can generate an array of all ones for you. We have a full function, which generates an array of specified number. You can specify the dimensions of the array. I function also helps you to generate an array of identity matrix. There is a diag function, which helps you to generate an array. The diagonal elements we have to specify. The non-diagonal elements are populated with zeros to begin with. We spoke about arange function in the previous cell. This helps us generate a list of numbers. You specify the ending point mandatorily. You can also specify the starting point, the ending point, and the step size. Similarly, we have linspace function, which generates linearly spaced values. You have to specify the starting point, the ending point, and the number of values you want. We have spoken about the arrange function. We have reshape function, which is a very important function when we are doing data analysis. The reshape function helps you to restructure the number of dimensions, the number of rows and columns in your array. It helps you to reshape your data in case your operations require your data to be in some different format. So we will look at reshape function in depth also a little later in this session. In addition to reshape function, we have a random module in NumPy. This random module has a lot of functions for us to generate random numbers and operate on them, right? So there is a function called random, which helps us generate random numbers. In this case, we are generating, in this particular statement, we are generating an array of 3 cross 3, 3 rows and 3 columns. Populated with all random numbers between 0 and 1. So you have a randint function in random module, which again generates integers. You have to specify the range within which the integers are picked up. You can also specify what else should be the shape of the matrix or the array that is generated by this randint function. You can generate a matrix of populated with data which is normally distributed. You have to specify what will be the mean of your data, what will be the standard deviation, and what should be the size or shape of your matrix that you want to be generated. So I'm using matrix and array, but please don't get confused. It's an ND array, and when I speak word matrix, it means a two-dimensional array. So if you are doing it along with me from the Jupyter notebook shared with you, you'll be able to see the output on your own computers. Please feel free to change the values and see the impact of changes made by you also. Our ND array supports a lot of data types, not just integers. You can have an array of Boolean values. You can have an array of bytes. You can have an array of signed and unsigned data types, unsigned short and unsigned integer, signed short, signed integer, signed long, and so on. We have a lot of attributes also for each ND array object. You have the shape attribute, which helps you to see the number of values along each dimension. You have ndim attribute, which helps you to see the number of dimensions in your array. We also have dtype attribute, which helps us to both see the data type of each element in the array, as well as to change the data type, to set the data type. The attribute item size helps us to find out what is the number of RAM locations required to store each element in the array, and total size of your ND array can be seen by looking at by finding out the value of size attribute of your array. In addition to these attributes, there are a lot more attributes provided for various kinds of tasks in the NumPy module. I am here, discussing only the ones which are most frequently used when we are doing data analysis. So here's a cell which talks about creating an array. The name of my array object is ARR1. This is a two-dimensional array. You can see the format in which I have passed data here. This is a list of lists, right? So this list of two lists is reformatted as a two-dimensional array with 5 columns and 2 rows. I can print this array directly by typing its name or by using it in a print statement. You can call all other functions like type. You can use or see the value of attributes like this in your print statements, right? As you change the data type or as you change the number of values in your NumPy array, you will see the change in total size required by your array and item size as well. An ND array is a mutable object. That means you can at any time change the values in a particular index or in a range of indexes in a slice of array. You can change the values. So in this case, we can see that I have reassigned value 20 to the index position 1 and 2. The first index here refers to the row number and second index refers to the column number. So when I run the cell, my output shows me what values I am manipulating here. So my original array is this. I can see that it is formatted in the form of 2 rows and 5 columns. My data type has been shown to me as numpy.nd array. And my original shape is 2 and 5, which means I have 2 rows and 5 columns. The number of dimensions is 2. I have rows and columns only. The data type of each array element is int32 because my data values are whole numbers. If you change the values to floating points, automatically your interpreter infers the data type as float32 or float64. Right, the total size of array is 10. There are 10 values in the array. Each element's size is 4. My integer storage requires 4 bytes. Therefore, I'm getting this value as 4, right? The element right now at index 1, 2 is 8. Once I reassign this index, the value at this index becomes 20. You can store a NumPy array or you can store an ND array into a file. The file name has an extension .npy. A very simple method is there for saving your NumPy arrays. The method is save. You can use this method by accessing it with a dot operator with NumPy module. Similarly, the saved NumPy arrays can be loaded back into your workspace using the load function. Right. So if you have an array and you no longer want to use it, you can delete an array. For deleting an entire array, you can use core Python's del function. We can also delete a specific items at specific indexes, or we can delete items in a range of indexes. We have created an array X here. So I just want to print all the members. Then I want to delete the members at position 0 and position 4. So I can use np.delete for this, pass the name of the array or the object name, and then in the square brackets, we can specify at what indexes you want the elements to be deleted. So here is another array. This is a 2-dimensional array. The name of array is Y. I can delete either a particular row or a range of rows or a range of columns from this array. You have to specify the name of array in that case, also specify the row numbers you want to be deleted. And if you want the deletion to happen over columns, you have to specify the axis parameter. Axis parameter in case of a 2-dimensional array, we have generally x-axis and y-axis, right? If you want your operation to take effect over the rows, you have to specify axis is equal to 1. If you want your operation to take effect over the columns within your data, you have to specify axis is equal to 0. Generally, axis is equal to 0 is the default value. So the operation takes an effect over the rows of the data. So we can see the effect of running the cell here. Original X here is a flat array of 5. Is there anything that we need to address? Right, so we have created an X here, an array called X here. It is a flat array of 5 numbers. We deleted the values at index 0 and index 4. Please make a note of the way we are passing indexes now here to be deleted. They are in the form of a list, right? So we want the items at index 0 and at index 4 to be deleted. This is the result. Original items at index 0 and at index 4 have been deleted. We are now talking about array Y. This is a 2-dimensional array with 3 rows and 3 columns. I have sent my data in the form of a list of lists, right? And then I want to delete its first row. Row number 0 refers to first row. I've specified this axis is equal to 0. That means the first row has been deleted. The values 1, 2, 3, which was the first row of my original Y, has been deleted here. And in this command, in this Python statement, I am trying to delete column 0, right? Because my axis parameter says 1. So this impacts the column axis. we can find here the first column missing, right? The first column or column number 0 has been deleted. So next we will look at some operations which help you to manipulate, which help you to modify the contents of your array, by inserting more elements or by appending to the previously present elements. A lot more functions we will see. So we have created two arrays here, X and Y. X is a flat array, Y is a two-dimensional array. I can use append function, which again is a built-in function for adding more elements to X. The syntax is very clear and very simple. You just have to write np.append, pass the name of the array object which you want to be appended to, and then pass the list of values that you want to be appended to the contents of X, right? This is straightforward. By default, the operation takes place on the axis parameter when it is, axis is equal to 0 value. We can also append over column axes. In that case, you have to specify axes is equal to 1. So I have added values 6, 7, and 8 to the original X, and we can see the value of X after making the amendments, right? Then we have array Y, which has 3 rows and 2 columns. Right now, we can add, it has 2 rows and 2 columns. And I have appended one more row to it, a row which contains 9 and 10. So here we can see Y has been appended with a third row, values 9 and 10. I want now to add another column to Y. So you can add a column, a third to Y using the syntax like this. Please make a note of the difference in the way we have passed parameter while appending to the row and while appending to the column. See, we have passed the column values in the form of a list of lists, and the axis parameter has been specified as 1. So we are moving on to some really interesting operations now on NumPy, on NumPy module. Let's look at the operation of stacking together two or more arrays which may have different shapes and compatible shapes. So when you are putting together or stacking together arrays, you may need to use a reshape function in between, or maybe some other operations before you can successfully put together 2 or more arrays horizontally or vertically. So we have horizontal stacking and vertical stacking here. Let's create the arrays on which we will demonstrate this function. So I have created X and Y, 2 arrays. X is a flat array. I've created it using the array function. I have created Y, which is a 2-dimensional array. It has 2 rows and 2 columns. We have printed both X and Y. So here is my X and here is my Y. X is a flat array, Y is a 2-dimensional array. We want to put together X and Y vertically, X on top of Y. So the operation very intuitively named is called VStack for vertical stacking. You have to call this as np.vstack and pass it the values for X and Y, the object names of X and Y. So we can see the effect of this statement here. The values of X have been placed on top of the values of Y. So this is vertical stacking of X on Y. In case we want to do horizontal stacking or put together X and Y horizontally next to each other, in that case, the function that we have is hstack. And I would like to bring on record here, the methods or the functions that we are looking at in this session are not the only ways of doing what we intend to do. There are multiple ways, there are multiple functions for doing the same thing. I have used the ones which are very basic here in this session. As you advance in your exploration, as you learn more, you'll find a lot more ways, much smarter and much shorter code to do the same things. So when we want to horizontally stack X and Y together, we will need to reshape X, right? My X is a flat vector here. I want to convert it into a vertical vector before I can join it horizontally with Y, which has 2 columns and 2 rows. Since X has only 1 row, I have to reshape it to contain 2 rows so that I can place it next to Y. So that thing can be done here using the reshape function. We have reshaped X to contain 2 rows and a single column. Original X contained 2 values in a single row. I have reshaped it here to contain 2 values in a single column. So it has become a vertical column vector, and then I have joined it with y using hstack function. So the syntax is np.hstack y and x.reshape 2,1. We have changed the shape of x from a flat vector to a column vector containing two values in a single column. So you can see the result here. Y has been put in front of X horizontally. Please execute this cell, make changes to the contents of X and Y, do a little bit of tweaking on your own to find out, whether you are getting a hang of what hstack and vstack does for us. I may not be looking at the chat window very often. In case there's a very relevant question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. The next operation that we'll see is of copying. You can create an array and copy it into another array using the copy function. So we can call it in two ways. You can call copy directly on the object that you want to be copied into another object. You can also call it like np.copy or using the NumPy modules copy function. So in both cases, our result is same. This is a deep copy operation. We can also find out the diagonal elements in a multidimensional array using the DIAG function. So you create a function like this, you create an array like this. So this is a two-dimensional array, its name is Y. We can use DIAG function to see the diagonal elements, not only the primary diagonal, you can also see the elements above and below the primary diagonal. So a DIAG Y k is equal to 1 shows me all the elements which are above the primary diagonal by one position in array Y. -1, when the value of k is -1, it helps me see all the elements which are below the primary diagonal by one element. K is equal to 2 will help me show the elements which are two elements above the primary diagonal, and so on. You can have plus and minus indicating whether you want to go above the diagonal or below the diagonal. The value that you can pass for k depends on the size of your original array. You can also see the unique elements in your array using unique function. So if I want to find out which are the unrepeated or non-duplicated elements, unique elements in your array, you can use the function numpy.unique. We can sort an array both along the row axis and along the column axis by using the sort function. Of course, if you do not specify the axis parameter, the default axis is the row axis. So we have our original Y here. We can see that the diagonal elements are 3, 35, and 94. So our primary diagonal is this. Diagonal D2 are the elements one position above the primary diagonal, that is 2 and 6. This is k is equal to 2. Below the diagonal is when k is -1, so 124 and 81. When you specify k as -2, so you get 37, which is the value 2 elements below your primary diagonal. Slicing and indexing are very important operations when we are doing data analysis on huge data sets. So indexing refers to either using integer indexes or Boolean indexes to access or extract specific values. You can do slicing, which means you want to extract a specific range of rows and columns from your multidimensional array. We have created here an array ARR2. This is again an array of 6 columns and 5 rows. That is 5 cross 6. Sorry, 4 rows and 6 columns. It's a 4 cross 6 array. We have printed its shape, and then I'm trying to access a particular element which is at index 1, 0. That means I want to access the element in row number 1 and column number 0. Just for the sake of completion, I would like to tell that the row numbers and column numbers start at 0 in Python. So row number 1 actually refers to second row in your array, and column number 0 refers to the very first column in your array. So when we type this statement, when you execute this line, you will see your array like this. This array has 4 rows and 6 columns. The element at index 1, 0 is this. This is row number 1. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is your row number 1. And in this row, the first column is this column, 1, 4, 2, 1. The index 1, 0 refers to this item here, right? It is row number 1 and column number 0. This row here has row number 0, then 1, 2, and 3. Column number 0, 1, 2, and so on. So the shape of this array is 4 cross 6, which means it has 4 rows and 6 columns. The element originally at 1, 0 is 4, this element. We can also extract a slice of this array. Slice means a subset of rows and columns of this array. For creating a slice or for extracting a slice of your array, we generally use this syntax. You use the name of the array, specify the slice or the range of rows that you are interested in and the range of columns that you are interested in. In this specific example, I'm interested in row numbers 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm interested in column number 3 onwards. You can see that we have specified the starting value of the row and an ending value for the row. When you specify a slice like this with a starting point and an ending point, the slicing operation has an effect to begin. The starting point is inclusive, whereas the ending point is not included in the slice that is returned to us. So we will have rows 2, 3, and 4 extracted for us in this case. Along with that, we will have the values from columns 3, 4, 5, and 6. Since there is no ending point specified here for column numbers, so all the columns till end, till last column will be extracted for us. We can skip both the starting point and the ending point. In that case, all the rows, all the columns will be extracted for us as a part of slicing. In indexing as well as in slicing, we can use positive integers. We can also use negative integers for accessing elements of an array. Just like the index of first element in an array is a 0 in a flat array, the index of last element is -1. So the last element in a flat array has an index of -1. The second last element has an index of -1, -1, which is -2, and so on. So in this case, we are trying to extract a slice of our array. We're just trying to demonstrate ourselves the effect of change in syntax, how it impacts the return type you get out of the operation. I have created here a two-dimensional array. This array has 3 rows and 4 columns, and I'm interested in just row number 1. I'm interested in extracting row number 1. So both these lines of code do the same thing. They extract row number 1 for us, but the return type of these two arrays created by these 2 lines of code is totally different. So in first statement here, where we have used X to denote the return, this returns a single row as a flat array for us. Whereas Y in this case is not a flat array, it is a 2 cross 1 array. The rank of both return values is different. You can see the return type of both X and Y using this code. You can see the number of dimensions of X and Y. You can see the shape of both X and Y. The difference has been created by the way you have written your code. So when we are performing data analysis, we have to be very sure of what kind of return type you want to ease the further operations in your data science pipeline or in your data analysis pipeline, depending on what kind of outputs you're expecting to work with in the future operations, you should write your code. Here we are getting the return as a flat array. In this case, we are getting the return as a 2-dimensional array. The rank of X, here we can see that it is a flat array of 4 values of only single dimension. And here we can see that we have got a 2-dimensional array containing the same 4 elements. While you're creating an array using the array function, you can also specify the number of dimensions you want your array to be of. So I have here 4 values. Without the endim parameter, this would have been laid out in the form of a flat array of a single dimension. So its shape would have been 4, a tuple consisting of 4. But here by specifying endim parameter, this array has been laid out in the form of 2 dimensions. So you can execute this code and see for yourself. Just comment out these lines for now, because we have not yet introduced ourselves to pandas. Right. Just execute these lines and see for yourself what is the effect of endim parameter in the array function when you are creating an array using array function and specifying the number of dimensions to be used. You'll see the output somewhat like this. So this has been laid out in the form of an embedded list, a 2-dimensional array. So next we are looking at something which is called fancy indexing. Fancy indexing is also integer indexing, but it's a little different way of passing row and column numbers to extract specific elements from our array. Just like in all the cells, we have first created an np.array function. One more thing which I want to share here is that it's not important for us to import numpy in every cell. For the sake of completion, for the sake of independence, in every cell I have written the import statement. In your first cell in the Jupyter notebook, if you do the imports, that is sufficient. It will last for the entire session. However, for the sake of independence of each cell, I have written import statement in every cell. So once you have imported, you can create an array. I have created here a 3x3 array. I want to access specific elements using fancy indexing. Now, what is fancy indexing? I have passed separately the list of row numbers and the list of column numbers. The impact it has is similar to the impact of this statement here. So what exactly I'm intending to do here is same as what I'm trying to intend here. I'm trying to extract the element at row number 0 and column number 0. This is the first element that I want. Then I want second element, which is at positions 1, 1, that is row number 1 and column number 1. And I'm interested in third element, which is in row number 2 and column number 0, right? I can write my fancy indexing by passing the list of rows separately and the list of columns separately. This is very similar to what I can write here. I think for a lot of us, this is a more intuitive way of writing the indexes for 2-dimensional arrays. Just specify a row number and column number next to each other, and this does the trick. However, a NumPy also allows you to pass indexes like this, the list of rows separately and the list of columns separately. Besides this, we can also use another array of numbers for accessing a specific set of rows or columns from our array. So I have created here an additional array, B. This array contains 3 values, 0, 2, and 1. I am interested in using these numbers as column identifier for accessing specific elements from my original array, from the array A. So what I have done here is I have accessed, I have passed the row numbers 0, 1, and 2, which is effectively all 3 rows of my array A. And I have passed here as column identifiers the array B. Our array B has values 0, 2, and 1. And the row identifiers have values 0, 1, and 2. So effect of this code is that I will be able to access element in row number 0 and column number 0. Then the second element that will be returned is in row number 1, column number 2. Third element in row number 2 and column number 1. So this syntax is very much like this syntax. The difference being that here I have passed 2 lists containing the numbers of rows and the numbers of columns. Here I have specified the number of rows in the form of a list directly, whereas the number of columns or the number of column identifiers has been passed in the form of another array in an array called B. What I can do using this syntax is that I can also mutate the elements of array A in place. So what we intend to do here is that the elements accessed using this notation can be changed in place. So all the elements in row 0 and column 0, then in row 1 and column 2, then in row 2 and column 1 are multiplied by 3. We can see the impact of this mutation on the data in this output cell. So this is my original array A. I can use the indexing in form 1 the fancy indexing, and it gives me elements 1, 4, and 5. So this is the element at index 0, 0. This is the element and index 1, 1, and this is the element and at index 1, 2. Same data has been accessed by using indexing in this format also, right? So the output has proved to us that this and this impact refers to the same elements. And then we have also used this syntax of accessing elements. We are accessing once from each row, and the column numbers have been specified in B. Then we have performed this mutation on our data in the specified at the specified indexes. So values at 0, 0 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 have been changed, have been multiplied by 3. So now we are looking at Boolean indexing in NumPy. When we are performing a Boolean indexing operation, what we usually do, what Python usually does is that it creates a Boolean array or a mask, then applies that mask to your original array to extract the specific elements which you might be interested in. We'll demonstrate this Boolean indexing through this simple example. Of course, I'm only discussing very basic examples because this was intended to be a beginner's session for people who are getting, right at the beginning of their career using NumPy and Pandas. So we have created an array. This is a 4x3 array. It has 4 rows, 3 columns. You can print the values in the array. And then I am interested in extracting only those elements from this array which are greater than 4. So the way or the syntax to do that is use the name of your array in the square brackets. Just type the Boolean logic which you want to be applied on every element of your array. What this effectively does is that it creates a Boolean array or a mask. The size of that Boolean array is exactly similar. The shape of that array is exactly similar to your original A. And then it tries to find out the elements at whatever places there's a true in the Boolean mask and returns them to you. So let us see what effect has this code had on the values in the array. We have this as our original array. Then I'm trying to find out all the elements which are greater than 4. So effectively, the result contains only those values which are greater than 4. This is a simple and short way of doing it, applying Boolean operations on your array, finding certain conditions, finding the elements which satisfy certain conditions on your arrays. Then we'll demonstrate the use of item size and size attributes of an array. There's an array which is a floating point array, right? We can find out what is the number of memory bytes required to store this array. The simple operation, the simple formula for this is to multiply the size of each item by the size of your overall array. That gives you the total number of bytes required to store your array. I suppose this is straightforward, right? The size of each item multiplied by the size of total array gives you the total memory required by your array for storing. You can reverse an array. Again, there are multiple ways of doing the reversal of an array. There are multiple built-in functions which can help you do the same effect, do the same thing. However, this is one smart way of reversing your array. You just use this slicing notation, 2 colons followed by a -1. It actually, lays out your array starting from the last value and going all the way to the beginning of your array, which has the same effect as reversing the array. If you are interested in finding out only the non-zero values of your array, then NP has a built-in method called non-zero, which helps you to find out the index of all non-zero elements within your array. There are a lot of functions segregated into different categories in NumPy, which help you to perform operations, related to statistics, linear algebra, and a lot of different categories of operations. So this is a very simple operation for finding out the minimum value in your array and a maximum value in your array. So array name dot min, array name dot max, then array name dot mean, array name dot standard std, array name dot quantile. They all help you to find out various statistical attributes or statistical values from your arrays. There's an interesting function for padding your array. Suppose you already have an array which is a 2x4 array in this case. I would request the participants to please mute the mics.
I don't know to write down anything.
Thank you. So we have an array here which consists of 2 rows and 4 columns. I want to pad this array with zeros. Zero is the default padding. You can also specify how many levels of padding you want on top of your array on all sides of your array. So we have this array here. I've printed the array values here. This has 2 rows and 4 columns. And here's the impact of using pad function. np.pad function allows you to pad the values in your array on all 4 sides with zeros. You can specify how many layers of zeros you want on each side by changing this pad underscore width parameter. Again, when we are doing data science and data manipulation, data science or data analysis and data manipulation operations, this pad function helps us to reformat our data to suit the operations that we are interested in, that we have lined up in case of our data science pipeline. So in case you want to know the index of a particular element in an array of a particular size, for example, I have a 6 cross 7 cross 8 array. This is a 3-dimensional array. I'm interested in knowing what will be the index of 49th element in this array, right? This is a 6 cross 7 cross 8 array. I want to understand, or I want to calculate the index for 49th element. I have a built-in function called unravel index, which helps me to identify the index. Along all 3 dimensions, you will find out the index of your element. So this will be in row number 0, column number 6 in the first matrix, in the first array. Please execute it and let me know if there's something which is not working or troublesome. We can also perform all kinds of operations, including matrix multiplication very easily with NumPy. So we have demonstrated matrix multiplication here. We created 2 arrays using the random function. Again, it's present in the random module. This function will generate for me random numbers between 1 and 12. The range of numbers is 1 and 12. The shape of the array that will be generated is 3 cross 4. It will be laid out in 3 rows and 4 columns. This is my second array, which again is generated using random numbers between 2 and 21. And the layout is 4 and 2, which means it has 4 rows and 2 columns. By this shape, we are able to find that they are compatible, right? They are multiplication compatible. So we can product these 2 arrays using this notation here, ampersand notation. You can also use the built-in product method. You can also write your own code. However, this is the shortest method, and we can use this ampersand notation here to find the product of 2 arrays or matrix multiplication. Of course, for any kind of matrix multiplication, we need to make sure that the participating matrices are size-wise compatible. There are a lot of built-in methods for arithmetic operations also. Same, we create 2 arrays to demonstrate the operation. You can find the dot product of these 2 arrays using any of these 2 statements, a dot b or nb dot a comma b. You can find the sum of all elements within matrix A using sum function. You can also find the sum of row-wise sum of elements. You can find the sum column-wise. You can multiply, subtract, divide matrices. You can perform all the operations on matrices element-wise. Using a set of built-in functions which NumPy provides. Here we are demonstrating the product of a vector with an array. So we have here 2 vectors, two arrays, V and W. The shapes of both these arrays are a little different. So we want to reshape vector V before it can be multiplied with a vector W. Right, this is a 3 column vector. This is a 2 column vector. Both are flat. So we want to reshape V into V1 such that now it has a shape of 3 cross 1, just for the sake of size compatibility. After you have done the reshaping, you can also see that its shape has been changed into 3 cross 2. Make sure that your shapes are compatible. The sizes of your arrays are compatible before attempting the product. We are trying to add a vector to another array here. So we have x, y, and z. X and y are both flat vectors. Z is a 2-dimensional vector. We can see their shapes and dimensions using the attribute values. When you want to add x and y, this operation x plus z plus x or x plus z helps you to perform the addition. This is called vectorization, where you do not have the explicit need of using either a for loop or accessing every index in a for loop to perform the element-wise addition. This plus operator here is overloaded to perform the operation on all the elements of x and y for you, which is broadcasting. And it's one of the features of NumPy which helps you to write very concise and clean code for your data science and numerical processing related operations, right? So for performing the sum between y and z, we need to first reshape y in 2,1 format so that it can be broadcasted correctly to match the size of z, and addition can be done. So original x looks like this, original y looks like this. When we want to perform the addition of x and y, we reformat our y in the form of a column so that we can add a y to every value within x. Similarly, when you are performing z and the sum of z and y, we will reshape y in the form of a 2,1 vector. We spoke about broadcasting. Same concept is demonstrated here in this cell. I have 3 arrays here, x and y, which I want to operate on, and the result which I want to be stored in z. So I have created z here using a function called empty-like. Empty-like again is a function for creating arrays. Empty-like creates an array of null values, and its shape is very similar to the parameter that you pass here. So this effectively creates an array of the same shape as x, where x is a 4 cross 3 array. So we have printed the values of all 3 arrays. Here I've used a for loop for addition between x and y. So if you want to do it you do it using a for loop, you have to row by row navigate through x and add the values of y to every element in each row of x and so on. The same thing can be done very comfortably using the broadcasting feature of NumPy. So in just one line of code, you can add y to every element in every row of x and see that the results are exactly the same. So this is by using our for loop, and this is by using the broadcasting feature of NumPy. We are looking at reshaping a little bit more in depth here. We generated an array ARR1 using random numbers. This has a size of 12, a flat array of 12 values, all randomly picked between 2 and 44. So I want to reshape this array. Before we try and reshape, we just have to make sure that the number of elements in your original array is compatible with the size that you are trying to use for reshaping. So I have 12 elements in the original array. I can reshape it into a 6 cross 2 array, which means I will have a 2-dimensional array. Excuse me, I'll have a 2-dimensional array of 6 rows and 2 columns. I can also shape it, or I can also reshape it into a 3-dimensional array where I have 3 cross 2 arrays. So we have created another array here, ARR2, again populated randomly. The size of this array is 3 cross 9, which means it has 27 elements. These 27 elements you can reshape into 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, or higher number of dimensions. Just make sure that the number of dimensions that you pass here is products to the number of elements that you have in the original array. So 3 cross 9 means 27 elements can be reshaped into 3 cross 3 into 3. You can also reshape it into 3 cross 3 cross 3 cross 1. In both these cases, your output will be formatted differently. And just by looking at the way your output cell looks, you should be able to make sure, you should be able to identify the number of dimensions in your output array. This is my original flat array, which has been populated using random integer function. It is reshaped into 6 cross 2. That means we have now 6 rows and 2 columns. you can reshape the same numbers into 3 cross 2 cross 2. So I have 3 matrices. Each one is of 2 cross 2 size. 2 rows, 2 columns, 2 rows, 2 columns, 2 rows, 2 columns. 3 matrices, which each of which is 2 cross 2. This is second array in the cell. We have reshaped into 3 matrices, which are 3 cross 3 each. So 27 elements, which I had originally, have been laid out in the form of 3 cross 3 matrices. You can also lay out them in 4 dimensions like this, where they have been formatted in the form of 4 column vectors like this. Right. So when you are reshaping your data, you have to make sure that the number of values that you have are compatible with the number of dimensions that you are passing during reshape. If there's a mismatch, you are going to get a runtime exception, and we need to sort that out. So we can also convert a 2D array into a flat array. For example, here we have array 1, which is a 2-dimensional array. You can see that it is 2-dimensional by checking the value of its shape attribute, and by passing -1 to reshape function, your array will be flattened out to be converted into a flat array. Right. So this was my original array with shape 3 cross 2. I have reshaped it into a flat vector like this. You can see that the shape of your vector is now 6. So this is flattening out using the reshape function. We'll see some special functions in NumPy. These special functions are used, when you are interested in a specific kind of functionality, during your data science related projects. We created a NumPy array here. It's the arange function. It's using the arange function. You can check whether all the values in your arrays are close to each other in a particular range using all close function. To the all close function, we specify a tolerance limit, which helps you to figure out are the values in the arrays close together within the specified tolerance limit. We can see here that these two arrays have values close to each other within the tolerance of 0.1. Right, but not they are close to each other within the tolerance of 0.5, but not within 0.1. There's a function called where, which helps you to identify specific values from the array. For example, in this case, I'm interested in all the values which are greater than 15. In this case, I'm interested in all the values which are less than 3. But in addition to finding out those values, it is also helping me to manipulate the array. So I'm identifying array elements which are less than 3. For all elements which are less than 3, I'm manipulating them, I'm changing them, multiplying them by 5. All the remaining elements which do not satisfy this Boolean condition are retained as it is. So this was my original array. This was the array after performing the changes. That means all values less than 3 were multiplied by 5 and remaining values were retained. So there's also a clip function which helps us to find out the values within an array within this range. So in my array, which is generated using a range function, I'll have values from 0 to 9. I want to clip the values between 4 and 5. So all values in your array which are less than 4 will be changed to 4. All the values which are greater than 5 will be changed to 5, right? So 4 and 5 will be retained. This is my array which has been clipped to lie between range 4 and 5. There is also a special function called argpartition, which helps us to find out the indexes of largest elements within the array. So we use this function to identify the indexes of 3 largest elements in the array, and then we can use these indexes to sort the array, to identify the array in a particular, to identify the array elements in a specific order. These are really interesting functions. So please make sure that you execute and see how they work for you and where you can put them to use in your projects. There's a function to extract values from an array. The function extract takes a mask, a Boolean array, to find out or to extract specific values. Here I have created a Boolean array called mask1. The condition used to extract the element is that the element should be divisible by 2. So np.mod function helps me to identify all the values whose modulus value is 0, right, when divided by 2, whose remainder is 0 when divided by 2. This mask I have used in the extract function to identify only those elements where the value is divisible by 2. You can also perform bitwise operations using the built-in functions in NumPy. So I have bitwise and I have the binary representation, which can be obtained using a binary underscore REPR function. You can use bitwise and bitwise, or you can also use this symbol for performing AND operation, bitwise AND operation on two arrays. There is the functionality for handling date times and for handling time zones. In NumPy, we can use a module called PYTZ for time zone related functionality in in NumPy. So we can create the range of time values also using the range function, just like in this cell, we have created a value of range of 4 time values. We have used a date time as string function to convert or to lay out in the form of UTC time zone, or use the PYTZ modules time zone function to specify the time zone that we are interested in. Again, since I'm running short of time, I'm moving a little too fast because I've not just started pandas also. There's also a busy day calendar function in NumPy, which helps us to, to create a calendar object, to specify the holidays, to create the masks for specifying your working days, and so on. There is a functionality for doing linear algebra related functions in NumPy. You have determinant function, you have function to calculate NOR, a lot of functions. So we can also convert a pandas data frame. We can also convert a CSV file into a pandas data frame. We can also convert it into a NumPy array. So a lot of functions can be done like this. A lot of functionalities available in NumPy, which can help you to work on your CSV files, your Excel files, convert them into native Python formats or ND arrays, and work on them. There are a lot of functions which are called universal functions in different categories. We spoke about this. A very, very quick introduction to Matplotlib. Matplotlib is a plotting library in Python. It has functions for 2D and 3D plots. As I told you, data science heavily relies on plotting to find out the features of your data. There's a PyPlot module which has MATLAB-like plotting capabilities. We also can use object-oriented notation for plotting using Matplotlib. There's a very basic plot called plot. You can specify the values for x axes. You can specify the values for for y axes. You can also customize your plot with x label, y label, title of your plot. You can also customize the ticks over both the axes. You can specify the annotations on your plot. All of these functionality is available. You can use object-oriented notation in your plotting. You can have your axes contain multiple subplots. You can configure or customize each of these subplots separately. And all of this. There are multiple kinds of plots: a scatter plot, line plot, a horizontal bar, a pie chart, and so on. You can also handle your image-related data using Matplotlib. So you can open an image, you can manipulate the pixel values of an image, all using Matplotlib. So that brings us to pandas. I actually wanted to focus a lot on pandas, but it seems we're running short of time anyway. So pandas is the Python library for working with tabular data. It has capabilities of working with data in the form of Excel sheets, SQL databases. You can import your data from multiple file formats: CSV, Excel, JSON, SQL, and so on. It has a built-in functionality for plotting. It is based on top of NumPy. Like NumPy, pandas also supports vectorization. There are a lot of built-in functions for statistical operations, for aggregation, for transformation of data. And there is a primary data structure, which is called a data frame, that is provided to us in pandas. In addition to data frame, there is also a series object. While your data frame is two-dimensional, your series is a single dimensional data object. Pandas supports a lot of intelligent indexing, data slicing. It helps you to create multi-level and hierarchical indexes for your data. It allows you to do very efficient handling of missing data, and a lot of features that are provided in pandas help make life easy for data scientists. However, there's a slight problem in terms of speed when we work with pandas over large data sets, and it's exactly for this purpose that there are distributed libraries and faster libraries like Rapids by NVIDIA, which help us to speed up the operations. So we will, very quickly go through this code. We have created a data frame here. Of course, for using any functionalities in pandas, we have to import pandas. So there's import statement here. We imported pandas with an alias PD. This data frame can be created. Data frame, the basic data structure in pandas can be created using data frame function. So pd.dataframe, you can specify the data to this data frame either in the form of any basic Python data structures, a list, a tuple, a list of lists, a dictionary. You can also create a data frame directly by reading values from a file, like a CSV file or an Excel file and so on. So we created a data frame. The name is df using the data frame function. The data is supplied in the form of a dictionary. So there are 3 columns based on 3 keys of the dictionary, name, age, and sex, and there are the values for three rows. You can see the values in data frame directly by writing its name or by using a print df statement. So this is what your data frame looks like. This is a 2-dimensional structure, right? Where data is laid out in the form of rows and columns, very similar to an Excel spreadsheet. So we can see that every row has been appended with a row number, which is also called row index. You can specify the column names, or by default, your column names will have values 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Since we have created this data frame from our dictionary, the dictionary keys have been taken as names of your columns or column headers. You can apply these statistical functions directly on the data frame columns. So df in square brackets age refers to the age column of your data frame. You can find the maximum value of age by using this notation. So we can see 35 is returned to you. Similarly, you can add a new column to your data frame. I have created a column. I have created a series here. So just like we create a data frame using data frame function, we can create a series, which is a single dimensional object in pandas using pd.series, pass it a set of values. You can also give it a name, and then you can find the maximum value of the series. What I'm interested in demonstrating here is that how we can add a new column to an existing data frame. So in the data frame, we can use square bracket notation and write the name of new column that you are interested in inserting. df in square brackets salary, and assign the newly created series to it. Series salary we have created in cell number 11, and directly by using this statement, you can add a new column to your data frame. Name of your column is salary, decided by this line here, this part of the line here, and the values have been taken from the values that are there in your salary series. This is some operations on the Titanic data set. It is a well-known data set available on Kaggle as well as on GitHub. So we have brought this CSV files contents into our data frame. So Titanic underscore df is a data frame which has been created by using read underscore CSV function. Pandas provides you a read underscore a group of functions for reading various file formats into our data frame. So once we have read this file into our data frame, we can see the first few rows of data frame using head function. By default, head function shows you top 5 rows. You can also specify the number, the integer here, and that many rows will be shown to you. Our data frame has columns like this: passenger ID, survived, B class, name, and so on. So we can see the top 5 rows using head function. You can also use descriptive functions called describe and info for looking at the statistical properties of each of the columns in your data frame. The properties that I can see by using describe are count the number of values in each column, the mean value of values in each column, standard deviation, minimum value, first quantile, second quantile, third quantile, and so on. Info function shows you for each column what is the number of non-null values, what is the number of values, what is the data type of values, whether that column is a primary key or not. You can see all the column names using the parameter, using the attribute columns. Please note that this is an attribute, so you do not need to affix the round brackets in front of it. We are interested in knowing the people, the passengers with age greater than 50. So that can be done this using this simple notation here. Titanic DF is the name of my data frame. In square brackets, I have specified the Boolean condition that I want to be applied on my data. So I want to extract from the age column all those people whose age is greater than 50. This returns another data frame which has been stored in this variable. You can see the data type of this newly created data frame using this type function passed to the print. And then from this value of passengers underscore above underscore 50, I only want to print 3 columns. So name, age, and survived column. So I can see the name of the person, age of the person, and the survival status, where 0 means the person did not survive and 1 means the person survived. You can see that all the age values here are greater than 50 because our shortlisting was done. The filtering was done based on that Boolean condition that age should be greater than 50. Suppose we are interested in those passengers who have not provided their age is missing in the data frame. So we can apply this condition to check those passengers whose ages are not available. So Titanic DF age refers to the age column, not NA refers to all the values in age which are not nans, which are not missing. We have applied a Boolean not condition here. So we are using a double negative. The overall effect is returning all the values which are all the passengers where the age column contains a missing value. So for all the columns we have in this data frame, we are printing or returning only 2 columns, age and a name. So these are all the passengers who did not provide their ages, right? So the age column contains an app. We are interested only in name, age, and survival status of the passengers whose ages are greater than 60. So we can combine these 2 lines into a single line here. Instead of 50, we are now interested in people over 60, and we are interested in their name, age, and survival status. So you can see we have the values of all 3 columns such that the ages are greater than 60. Here we are interested in all the people who are above 75 and they have survived, right? So we have applied 2 Boolean conditions here. This is a combination of NumPy and Pandas code. We have first condition that age is greater than 75, and we have second condition that the survival status or the value of survived column is 1. So this returns me the name, age, and survived status for all the passengers who are above 75 years of age and whose survival status is 1, who have survived the crash. The plot method, which is built into data frame, has a lot of methods, a lot of types of plots can be drawn. So we have an area plot, a bar plot, horizontal box plot, and so on. So using this code, you can see what methods you have available for plotting using your data frame directly without using Matplotlib explicitly. So if you wish to check the number of missing values in every column of your data frame, you can use isNull function followed by sum function. So this finds the sum of all null values in all of the columns of the data frame. So once you have null values, you would like to drop them, right? You would like to handle them some way. So in this case, we would just like to drop the rows with any of the columns having missing values. So once again, I have read the data into a data frame. You can see its original shape is 891 by 12. It has 891 rows and 12 columns. I just want to let go of all the rows where there are missing values. Simple application of drop any function helps you do that. After dropping the rows with missing values, I have stored the resulting data frame into a new object called Titanic underscore DF underscore no NA. You can see the new shape now is 183. That means from 891 rows, I have reduced to just 183 rows. New columns are same because there is no column has been reduced. You can also delete over the column axis. If there are, or if some column contains all null values, then that column will be deleted. you can find out the number of survivals in each sex group, right? You can group your data and based on sexes and find out the counts of people who have survived in each groups. The syntax is very simple. We have applied the Boolean condition of survived being equal to 1. So name of the data frame dot survived means we are referring to this column within this data frame, and we are checking for this Boolean condition that the status, the survived value has to be 1. And from this result of this data frame, we are referring only to the column 6. And from that, we are applying the value counts function, which counts the number of males and number of females such that their survival status is 1. So I'm getting 82 females which have survived and only 41 males which have survived. Now, after you obtain such kind of statistics, it's very easy for us to plot them or to apply further analysis on top of them. Right? Here we are finding only for males, what is the ratio of males who survived and who did not survive. So among males, there were 54 who did not survive and who were only 41 who survived. 0 and 1 here refer to the values of survived column. 0 means they did not survive, 1 means they survived. You can group data together. You can group the rows in a data frame together by group by function. So here we are trying to group the rows by the value in column 6. And we want to find out the mean number of passengers in both categories, male and female, who survived. So the mean value for females is 0.93 and for males it's 0.43. We can see that the females have had a higher survival rate. Similarly, we can find the mean survival values by passenger class also. You can see that in class 2, there has been the most survival rate. We can do the plotting very easily after grouping our data by using the built-in plotting facility using plot function. We can also apply the describe function on the groups that we can create from our data frame based on one or more columns. So we have used describe function here to describe the ages of 2 sex groups within this. So for females, we have the number of females, the number of males, mean age values of females and males, the standard deviation of their ages, and so on. This is a different kind of plot from the data frame for only the age column. This is a different kind of plot for only the age column, right? So this is a group plot with multiple subplots for 3 different P class values, right? Again, we have extracted only 2 columns from our data frame. You can count the number of values. This is, I have grouped and then performed some counts to identify some highlights, to identify some, insights from the data frame. We can group our data frame based on multiple columns at the same time. For example, here we have grouped based on both the 6th column and the fair column, right? So I had another case study, but I think we will not be able to cover it. Otherwise, I'll not be able to handle any questions. So Kevin, what should we do? Should we handle a few questions and stop, or?
We'll just go on for another few minutes. Do you know that?
Yeah.
So I think you're about to find a natural finishing point there. So we'll just go another few minutes.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So we will complete this case study itself, and I will not start another one. The notebook is shared with you. Please feel free to go through the study yourself. So here, what we are looking at is that the aggregation functions that are available to us in Pandas can be applied to the groups that you are creating by group by function also. For example, I have grouped the data frame columns by both 6 and fair columns. And out of these 2 columns, I have found the mean values for fair for both the 6s, and I have used those groups to plot a bar graph here. Right, we can see the contents of each groups that you can create using group by functions by using the built-in functions first and last to see the first entry, to see the last entry in your group. You can also see the contents of a group using a get group function. Right. Your Pandas has a very strong support for using split, apply, and combine functionality, which means you can segregate your data set, your data frame into multiple groups based on a criteria, based on your group by parameter. Then you can apply some transform, or you can apply some filtering on top of that data. The results of these operations can be combined together to get you to result into a new data set with the columns or the values that you are interested in. In this case, for example, I am trying to find out the maximum age in each group. Again, I can create a new function. I can create a user-defined function and apply that user-defined function on the groups that I have created from my data frame. We have created a function age categories here. So what this function does is that it it creates a new column in the data frame and assigns values to that column based on the mean age that is there in that column. So if the mean age is greater than 35, then middle age will be assigned as a value in age categories column. Otherwise, young will be assigned. So how do we use this user-defined function? I have created the groups earlier using group by function. So in that group, I can use an aggregation function. .agg helps you to apply a lot of functions, more than one functions on your groups. So I am applying the mean function and the age categories functions, these two functions on my age_6_ groups. So I had for both the groups in my data frame, I have their mean age values, and I have this new column which has been created for me. Age categories is the column name which is coming from this function, right? So what I wanted to demonstrate here is that once you create your groups, once you group your data frame, you can apply a list of functions on the groups using .agg function. The list of functions can not only be the built-in functions, but you can also apply the custom functions, the user-defined functions. So we applied mean function on the groups created based on the 6 parameter, the 6 column in the data frame. We also applied this age categories function to both the groups. The mean age of females was 32, that is, which was less than 35. Therefore, this age categories column contains the label young, and the mean age of males was greater than 35. Therefore, the label contains the value of middle age. If you are interested in seeing all the methods that are applicable through this AGG method to the groups, you can use this code, and it shows you the list of methods which can be applied on the groups created using group by function on our data frame. Say we have applied standardization here to the age column by using transform function. You can also use apply function to apply a function or a method to your data frame or to the groups within our group function. Right, so we can use lambda functions. You can also use user-defined functions. So basically, what we introduced ourselves is here to the functionality that NumPy provides with a lot of built-in functions and optimized functions that NumPy provides us for converting our data into a format which is suitable for data science pipelines, data analysis. We also did a very brief introduction to pandas, how pandas allows you to work very comfortably with data which is in a tabular format, how it allows you to handle your data which is missing, how it allows you to extract specific columns, to combine specific columns, to add new columns to your data, to group the data in your rows according to some column values or to more than one column values, how you can write your functions and apply those functions on the data which is present to you in our data frame. We also saw that these formats are interconvertible. You can convert native Python types into arrays. You can convert arrays into data frames. You can also have data which is in the files converted to ND arrays or into pandas data frames. We can store a data frame back into a file, so that the result of your analysis is persistent, and you can use it for further operations in your data frame. Right, I think I have reached the end, and I would definitely invite you all to go through the case study, which I could not cover due to.
Thank you very much. Folks, sorry, I just allowed a few moments of extra moments there just to sort of allow to finish there. So we're going to have the few questions and answers now. If you could put them in the chat, I'll read them out.
Yeah, I'm reading a question by Florian. I did not get the reason and function for using tiled character. Tiled is a negation character, right? So I applied a Boolean condition there in that statement where I was interested in finding out all the values which are null, right? By negating that, I use this tiled character to negate that condition. So I'm getting all values which are null, right? This is a negation character.
Okay.
Right. So there was another question. How does the assigning logic of reshaping work? He has also put OKIC. So I guess the point is clear. Reshaping works by simply changing the indexes. Actually, all the values in NumPy are stored in contiguous flat locations. All the shapes and dimensions are the magic created by index values, right? So when you are reshaping your data either in a NumPy array, ND array, or in a data frame, the change happens only in the indexes, right? The basic storage remains the same, the contiguous memory allocation. I think numpy.where can help you with that. Right, numpy.where can work in this statement also. The statement which has been put in the chat window will work fine.
And Namrita, you mentioned the book at the start. Just in case anybody has missed the start, you can mention the book again.
Yes. This book is by Wes McKinney, Python for Data Analysis. Wes McKinney is the developer of Pandas library. So this is the book for Pandas. It also covers NumPy and a lot of other functionality, web scraping using Python and all that. So it is the book for everybody who is interested. There is another book by Oliver which is called Guide to NumPy. This is the book for Pandas, Python for Data Analysis by Wes McKinney, and Guide to NumPy by Travis, the book on NumPy. Both of these authors are the originators for these two packages. So anybody, any student who is interested in learning the depths of these two libraries, I think they must refer to them. Besides these, there is a CS231 at Stanford University, which is also a very good resource for everybody interested in exploring further.
Great stuff. Just to emphasize, I'll just ask this as a question. Is NumPy and Pandas important for being a data scientist in PyData?
I personally totally would say yes, but there are alternative packages, there are alternative programming languages, there are alternative tools for doing it. It is not mandatory, but very powerful if you have them in your skill set.
Just to sort of clarify there, NumPy and Pandas are very good and very useful at spending time at getting good at them. And I'm sure you'll agree that you'll always find a use for all of those sort of functions and wrappers and functionalities, that there will always be an opportunity to use them. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, folks. I'm going to stop the recording.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you.